Hello, beautiful humans. Uh, I am Sierra Chestnut. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in the state of Idaho. And today I want to talk to you about finding a therapist who's a good fit for you. I get asked a lot, how do I find a therapist? How do I find a therapist I like? And I'm going to do a little 3-part series, and hopefully it will answer some of those questions. Today we're going to talk about the meat and potatoes of this. We're going to talk about how to find a therapist who's a good fit. The next one we'll talk about the financial components of finding a therapist, and then in the third one we'll talk about sort of like advocacy and honesty, and tweaking things in your current therapeutic relationship if it's really close but still kind of rocky. Yeah? Okay, so today let's first talk about why it matters. Over and over again, we find in research that the most prominent indicator of whether a client will benefit from therapy or not is not the modality, the frequency, the type of licensure, any of that. It is the relationship with the therapist. And there are a lot of things that go into that make sense. If you don't feel safe with your counselor, you're probably not going to be honest with them. And we're only as good as the information that we have. And if you don't feel seen by your therapist, meaning like fully understood, then you may be disregarding advice or insight that they give you because it doesn't feel fully informed or it doesn't resonate with you. So there are a plethora of things that go into making that relationship feel good, but it is the most important indicator of whether or not you will get better in that particular therapy office with that particular clinician. It doesn't mean that you won't see any benefit from a therapist who is not like a perfect match for you, but it does mean that you will see the most benefit from someone who does fit you well. So I want to talk about how you find that. A lot of therapists offer a 15-minute free consultation, whether that's on Zoom, on your phone, or Doxy, or a HIPAA compliant video, or on your phone, or in person. It is worth taking those 15 minutes to figure it out, because honestly, you'll know. By the end of the 15 minutes, ideally, you'll know. And it's good for both of you. We clinicians want those 15 minutes also to answer the question of if we're a good fit, because ethically, we really need to be offering services to people that we can be helpful to. Does that make sense? So what I do if I'm looking for a clinician, and yes, therapists see therapists. I go every week. Sometimes it's not available to everyone, and sometimes your therapist won't self-disclose that, but the nature of the work that we do includes enough vicarious trauma that it can be a good idea. So when I am looking for a clinician, I look for one who offers a consult, or if I find one I like and they don't have that listed, I will email, call, etc., and see if they are open to having that consult. And during that consult, I usually come in with a list of 2 things. I come in with a list of like the content that we're going to work on. What are the symptoms? If you know a diagnosis that you want to work on, maybe share a diagnosis. If you know, so say you're going to go in and you're like, hey, I have a PTSD diagnosis. Do you work with that? I want to know if you have training, advanced training in it. And I want to know if you're comfortable working in it, right? You can be more specific. You can say, hey, I have, childhood sexual trauma, and are you comfortable working with that? So ask about your content. Ask about, I'm coming out of domestic violence. Do you work with that? I'm looking for couples therapy. Is that something that you're comfortable with? I'm on the spectrum or identify as autistic. Are you comfortable with that? So talk about the content. Write out your list of things you want to work on, and talk about the content. Um, it's worth mentioning content that you've already dealt with. So, say you have a childhood history of um, loss. You lost a parent when you were small and you feel like you've completely processed that. It's worth mentioning it and saying, hey, I've done a lot of work around this, because it may come up at some point and it helps them to know that. And it's helpful to you if you know that they are knowledgeable about that, because if you've already worked on it, sometimes it's hard to let in someone that feels like a rookie in that area. Does that make sense? The other list I come in with is what is my context that is important to me. So this is where we get into, maybe you want a clinician who identifies and presents as a specific gender. Maybe you want a clinician who is part of the BIPOC community. Maybe you want a clinician who is part of the LGBT community, who has a specific like faith or spiritual base, or conversely, someone who ardently is not one of those things, right? So you might say, like, I'm very comfortable working with a myriad of people. I don't really care about all of those things, except I'm trying to treat religious trauma. So it's really important to me I don't see a religious based therapist. Does that make sense? And you have the right to do that. It's interesting because those are things that we don't welcome discrimination on in general, right? We don't want to be like, oh, I don't want to see that person because of their ethnic presentation or heritage or culture or race or how they identify, like any of that ball of wax. But it is important, if it's important to you, to be sort of in a space that feels safe. So if you're a person of color and you come in and you say, I don't know that I feel totally comfortable talking with someone who identifies outside of that community, then that's something you can say in that consult and get an answer back. It's worth mentioning that a clinician may not self-disclose. So, like, with my clients, I say, I'm a part of the LGBT community. I'm very LGBTQAI++. I usually shorten it, but I'm very queer friendly. And I'm part of the community, but I'm never really more specific than that unless it's clinically indicated. Does that make sense? Because the way that I say that could apply to many different identities across the spectrum there, including ally. And your therapist wants to stay, as much as they can, a blank slate for you so that you can process whatever feelings or experiences you've had. Does that make sense? So you can ask them, are you comfortable and do you have training working with the BIPOC community, for example, or the gay community? And they may say, yes, I'm really familiar with it. I have advanced training in it. Or they may choose to self-disclose and say, yes, I am a gay man myself. So myriad of different things. But if you feel like you're getting an answer that's not completely direct, that's why that's happening. So, recap. Bring in a list of the content you want to work on and the context that's important to you to be considered. And then check 2 things. Check that the therapist is knowledgeable about them and good at them. And what I mean by that is sometimes we know about things, but we're not great at working with it. I'll use myself as an example. I know about substance use disorders, but I do not have advanced training and certifications in substance use disorders. So when someone comes to me and needs that kind of treatment, I refer them out. Does that make sense? Another one that we see specialized a lot is eating disorders or disordered eating. that there is really specific training that goes into that. So you may be knowledgeable about it, but not really be good at actually treating it, which means if you come to me as a client and you say, hey, my mom had really severe bulimia, and I'd like to process how that impacted me, but I myself am not dealing with an eating disorder. I have knowledge that may be helpful to treating your trauma, which I'm good at. Um, and that's a different ballgame. Does that make sense? Do you hear the kind of the distinction there? So I often ask clinicians when I'm looking, I say, okay, these are the 5 things I want to work on. Maybe they're like, we'll use vicarious trauma as an example, right? I want to process vicarious trauma I have at work. And I might say, like, how knowledgeable are you about that? And is that a thing that you would say you're good at treating or that you like to work with? And that generally gives me kind of an idea of what their ballpark is. It's also worth looking at their online presence. Do they have a website? Do they have a Facebook, a YouTube, an Instagram, whatever? Do they have an online presence, and how do they present themselves? Because typically when you're designing your online presence, you're trying to write for your target audience. You're trying to, in as few words as possible, say, hey, you, I see you, and I can help you. As long as, that's what you want, I can help you. And if their online content resonates with you, then you are probably within that window of their ideal client, which means, yes, they have knowledge, and yes, they're good at treating it. Last thing I want to mention is your gut feeling. We humans know a lot of things that we don't know at a fully conscious level right away. There's a really great book about like the science of the gut feeling called Blink. And your brain, when it doesn't have to kind of like label and lay it all out for you to be able to talk through, processes information super, super, super fast. And that's part of where gut feeling things come from. So if as you're talking to someone, you have a gut feeling that's like, oh, you sound really great on paper, but I don't know that this feels 100% right for me. Heed that. Keep looking. Or if you're like, I'm not 1,000% sure, but I like you enough and feel safe with you enough that I am comfortable trying working with you, even though you don't happen to specialize in obsessive compulsive disorder. As long as they're not saying like, hey, I'm not qualified to treat you. It may be worth giving it a shot. I always tell people you should know by the 3rd session, and I have a pretty extensive intake, so it allows me to kind of launch into therapy in a different way than maybe when you have to do that intake process that feels like an interview. So take with a grain of salt. But I always tell people you should know by the 3rd session if what I know will be helpful to you. You won't be all better by the 3rd session. If I ever figure out how to do that, awesome. I will make so much money. Or I will just be deep in brief solution focused therapy and working in a different setting, right? But you should know kind of if you feel like we're headed in the right direction. Does that make sense? Okay. So hopefully that is helpful to you in finding someone to be helpful to you. We'll talk next time about all the financial pieces, the insurance, all of those kind of nuts and bolts. And then, the time after that, we'll talk about maybe optimizing the clinical relationship that you're already in. So I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you soon. Bye.